You're listening to The South Stands, a Buckeye football podcast by Ohio State fans for Ohio State fans on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Play, and SoundCloud. Here we go. Big Ten championship game this Saturday, December 7th, number 1 and 12-0 Ohio State versus number 8, 10-2 Wisconsin. Ohio State is a 16.5-point favorite. The over-under is 55 in this game. As usual, the game is going to be played at Lucas Oil Stadium in Indianapolis. Kick is 8 p.m. Eastern. The game will be broadcast on Fox. Gus Johnson, Joel Klatt on the call, and Plummer's girlfriend, Jenny Taft, on the sidelines.
Yeah, baby. Good take.
Overall, Ohio State is 3-1 in the Big Ten title game. This is their third meeting with Wisconsin in this game. As all you guys remember, Ohio State won the first two matchups 59-0 in the 2014 title game. That was while Ohio State was on its way to a national championship. And then 27-21 in the 2017 game. And that was J.T. Barrett playing on one good leg in that one. Ohio State pulled it out. As you guys remember, not too long ago, on October 26, Ohio State beat Wisconsin in the shoe, 38-7. They outgained the Badgers 431 to 191. Ohio State held Jonathan Taylor to 52 yards and 20 carries. J.K. Dobbins, for the second time, outperformed Jonathan Taylor, 163 yards rushing on 20 carries, 2 TDs. And, of course, wow. Chase Young really started his Heisman campaign in that game, finishing with 5 tackles for loss, including 4 sacks and 2 forced fumbles. He was a force to be reckoned with. This is interesting. Ohio State hasn't had an in-season rematch since 1975 when they played UCLA twice. That year they beat UCLA in the non-conference 41-20, and that was on their way.
That sounds weird when you hear that.
Yeah, 41-20. They beat UCLA. That game was actually played in the Coliseum that year. The only reason I know that is I happened to come across a recording of the game on YouTube recently. That game was actually played in the Coliseum where USC typically plays. Ohio State won 41-20. That was on their way to an 11-0 regular season and a number 1 ranking, and then they lost to the Bruins in the Rose Bowl 23-10. So why don't we go around the horn here, guys, and get some initial impressions. Chad, we didn't have you on board last pod, so why don't we get started with you? Just give me a few initial impressions on this game going in.
But first of all, excellent job on that Michigan preview, guys. That was sweet.
Thanks, buddy.
This game.
Thanks, Chad.
But you know what? I when you said the over/under was 55, I was like, basically saying that Wisconsin's not going to score many points against us. I mean, right? I mean, am I wrong? I mean,
no, that's the way I see it.
Crazy.
Yeah.
So, but you know, their defense is like I don't see how they can stop us. I mean, this is going to be a snore. I mean, in my opinion, I think Ohio State's going to come out because like we want to keep that number 1 spot. So we've got to eye test, like beat them handedly. So I see this game getting a little out of control in the second half.
Okay, Mr. Corcoran, from your new headquarters in Jacksonville, Florida. Why don't you give us a couple thoughts on this game going in?
Yeah, it's interesting. I was just watching the highlights just to remind myself of how badly we beat them, and it was a tight game in the first half, and then Chase Young just went off. He was just unstoppable. He didn't have a great game last year, as you guys noted, or like last week against Michigan. He was kind of bottled up for somehow. It was kind of surprising. And Wisconsin had probably the best game of their season, blowing out Minnesota. I don't think anyone expected that kind of a game.
No, I didn't.
I don't know. It's just 16 points sounds about right. I thought you guys said it was 12 last week, so like maybe it went up or something. It's hard to see how they're gonna. I mean, they barely moved the ball against us. They had a lucky touchdown, and once we made the adjustments like they always do, day after halftime. We just ran away with it. It's just very difficult to see how it's going to be any different of an outcome this game.
Okay, fair enough. Paige, how do you see it?
So I'm confused. Do you think it's going to be close, or do you think it's going to be a blowout?
Different outcome. Yeah, I think it's going to be a blowout. It's a different outcome from the last game a month ago or in late October or whatever.
So
that's what I'm saying.
Wow, I don't know how I feel about Mikey making a blowout prediction. Usually he's really.
Yeah, he's usually more conservative.
So, Mike, you're predicting it. You think it'll be Ohio State blowout, or you think Wisconsin makes it closer than what they did in the earlier matchup?
I'm saying it's an Ohio State blowout.
Okay.
I was tempering. I know it's a little confusing. I was tempering that, saying Wisconsin played well last week. Chase Young didn't have a good game.
Right.
And maybe it'd be difficult, different, but I just don't see it. I don't see it.
Okay. Paige?
Yeah, it's not going to be close. How could it be? I mean, they could have put 50 on him if it wasn't a monsoon when they played him the first time.
Yeah.
The only thing is, Ohio State's coming off of two pretty physical games, but then on the flip side, going into Minnesota, and I think they also had to play Iowa. So I think you can throw that out, right? Like, because they both had to, have some physical games to get to this point.
Mm-hmm.
Will be equally sort of beat up. I don't even buy. I just go back to all the cliches or trap games, looking ahead. Obviously those don't apply. Beating the same team twice in 1 year, yeah, sometimes, but just too much talent for Ohio State. I think there's a fair amount riding on this game for them. But then, interestingly enough, I do, and we'll get to this probably later. In a crazy scenario, there's a potential path for Wisconsin to make the playoffs themselves. So they got a lot to play for.
Wow, interesting. Well, I wonder what that scenario is. Matt, what do you think?
So, watching that game last week, I was taken by how Wisconsin was passing the ball more. They were not relying on Taylor or the run game. They weren't using brute force, and they were doing it. I guess, in a freaking snowstorm.
Yeah,
and they weren't overextending themselves. They were giving their receivers a little chance to make plays, and they did. I think they're a different team than the one we played. Not seismic. They didn't. They're not doing all kind of flea flickers and they're not doing anything that's noticeably or changing their game plan. But I think that they are relying less on the run and going to the throw a little bit more. So I think that how that plays into our hands is this way. I think our last week, the middle of our defense didn't do too well. The linebackers, I think, Kuda played really well, but we really missed Wade.
Mm-hmm.
I think this game will be our secondary really stepping up and making some big plays. And I would even go as far to predict Wade gets a pick six, or he does, or at least has an interception.
All right.
And on to that one step further, one of the best news that came out this week is that Taylor got picked as Big Ten Back of the Year.
Yeah.
Because, if Dobbins would have won, you would be giving a little fuel to Taylor. But sorry, it's going back to Dobbins, and I'm afraid he is going to punish that defense. And we could potentially see another 3 touchdown plus over 200-yard game from him.
Yeah. Matt, I just want to back you up on your observations from the Wisconsin-Minnesota game last week. Yeah, you were right. It's an interesting box score. Jack Cohn was 15 of 22 for 280 yards passing and 2 touchdowns. Jonathan Taylor only 76 yards on 18 carries. And, Wisconsin showing a little bit of explosion in the passing game, too. Quintez Cephas had a 47-yard pass reception. He finished with 5 pass receptions for 114 yards. And then Groshek, what is he like? I don't even know who that guy is. He had a 70-yard touchdown play. I don't know if he's a tight end or he's a running back. Had a 70-yard touchdown. Maybe that's just a catch and a long run. But In any case, Wisconsin, a kind of an interesting box score for Wisconsin in that game, in bad weather, relying on the passing game and not so much with the run.
And dare I use a word called finesse with Wisconsin? I mean, it almost seemed like that sort of game a little bit that they were playing. That it goes to completely away from everything that they usually live and breathe by. So it'll be interesting. But again, that kind of falls into our hands. It gives Chase Young some more time to get to the quarterback. It gives our secondary a way to pick off some balls. But again, I think linebacker play is going to be key because they're not going to go long. They're going to try to hit the middle again. So if we can stop, Taylor from going over 75 yards and keep the middle of the field pretty locked down, it should be a fairly easy game. I'm thinking that we only, it's going to be like 45-10, and that'll be a decent enough margin to get us. And the team will be focused because they've got a lot of new coach is very focused. It's not like someone who's taking this journey for granted. So I think they'll come in very fired up, and it'll be a fun game to watch from an Ohio State Buckeye fan perspective.
Okay. Yeah, I said in last week's pod, or the Sunday pod, that there just wasn't a lot of juice in this matchup for me. I mean, as we said when we looked back on the Ohio State-Wisconsin game last month, or back in late October, that we've seen this movie before. And if you look at the statistical profile of this Wisconsin team, they are the consummate Wisconsin team. Very good, solid in all the key areas, just solid across the board. 16th in offensive yards per play, 36 in total offense, 15 in rushing offense, 12th in passing efficiency. They don't do a lot of explosive stuff in the passing game, but they always seem to have a very accurate, efficient quarterback. A stout defense, they're 8th in defensive yards, opponents' offensive yards per play, so defensive yards per play, and then 6th in total defense. Yeah, it's a perfect example, a textbook of a Wisconsin team from the last 25 years. They have some good wins this year against the committee's top 25. They beat up on number 14 Michigan. They beat a solid Iowa team in Madison. They're 16th according to the committee, and then number 18 Minnesota, who actually plummeted in the rankings this week. They fell all the way down to 18. But be that as it may, 3 wins against the committee's top 25. So very respectable, very solid. And I think if Ohio State is slowed by injuries, like with Fields, Wade, Arnett, we know those guys are all dinged up. Wade didn't play, as you guys know. And if turnovers are a factor again this week, Ohio State has had a little trouble putting the ball on the ground these last few games. Wisconsin, I think, can make this a game. But I think that's the only way they can make this a game. If there are injuries that slow Ohio State down at key positions, namely Fields. But I think if Ohio State is okay on the injury front, they do a better job of taking care of the ball in this game. I have a tough time seeing how Wisconsin keeps this one close. Despite what we saw last week, it was nice to see them do some things in the passing game. But I don't know, against this defense, against that front seven, against that secondary, I don't know that they're going to be able to do enough in the passing game to really keep the Ohio State defense, off balance. And, we've been saying it all year, you have to be more than a one-trick pony on offense to compete with Ohio State. I think playing in a dome favors Ohio State. I think it favors their speed. I think it favors their skill players. And, this Ohio State team, it is tough to beat a good team twice in a season, as they say, and that is true. And Wisconsin definitely qualifies as a good, solid team. But I think this is a special team. I think this is a special season. I think there is a higher mission for this team. It goes beyond just winning the Big Ten. I honestly think it has its roots. What we're seeing this year and what Ohio State has accomplished so far really has its roots in what happened at this time last year, where a 13-1 Ohio State team was not only left out of the playoff, the committee actually put a 2-loss non-champ in Georgia ahead of Ohio State in the final rankings. And I just think that was kind of an added insult to injury. I think this whole season has been about reclaiming their elite status. Ohio State that is, and getting back into championship contention. Did you guys happen to see or hear about the interview that Gene Smith did with the Lantern, where he talked about why he left the playoff committee? I don't know if you read or saw it, but he actually made reference to the fact that Ohio State was jumped by a 2-loss non-champ in Georgia, and that he was deeply troubled by, how the committee was applying the criteria. Anyway, I just would not be surprised if that was also a big rallying point for this Ohio State team. Chad, I want to kick it back over to you. Why don't you give us your prediction on this one?
I'm going to say Ohio State 47, Wisconsin 17.
Okay, 47-17, a 30-point. So another 30-point Ohio State win. Sounds reasonable to me.
Yeah.
All right, Mike, how do you see it?
I'm gonna go with all that I said before about how Wisconsin played well last week. Chase Young didn't have a great game. All that, despite all that, I still have a hard time seeing much of a different result from the first time around. I'm gonna go 37-10.
37-10. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, I like it. Paige?
Okay, follow me on this. Oregon beats Utah. Pac-12's out. LSU beats Georgia. One SC team is in. Baylor squeaks by Oklahoma. Now, Wisconsin beats Ohio State by 2 touchdowns. Who has the better resume at that point?
Ohio State.
2-loss Baylor. Ohio State's still in. So LSU's 1, Clemson's 2, Ohio State's 3. Who has a better resume? A 2-loss Baylor, or a 1-loss Baylor, or a 2-loss Wisconsin that just beat what everyone's saying could be one of the best teams in the last 25 years?
Plus Michigan.
There's a way Wisconsin could get in.
So do we get a choice to?
Interesting.
So we get a choice of playing on here or in Mars?
Dude, none of that is that outlandish. And the other
beating us
is,
by 2 touchdowns is
that's
not
a little crazy.
That is a little nuts.
Okay,
yeah.
And here's the other thing. All of that will have already transpired. They'll know if every one of those dominoes fell, they would know.
Yeah,
it's ridiculous. I get it. It's minus 3,000, but it's crazy.
Hey, it's fun to think about.
Yeah. Well, right.
Yeah.
So that is interesting. I mean, Wisconsin already has wins against the committee's number 14, number 16, and number 18. And if they take out number 1, a team of the committee's respected since, the first rankings and had up there in the top 2, number 1 for most of the time. That's an interesting point.
And you're comparing to Baylor. You're not comparing to Oklahoma. And Baylor's non-conference is terrible.
Yeah.
Why are we taking this big, long walk around the block when you just need your prediction?
I don't know. Yeah.
If we got beat by 2 touchdowns, I don't know if we'd even squeak in. Maybe if Wisconsin somehow made it, squeak by on a 1-point game, then would be something to talk about.
We beat more.
But they're not. Yeah. Anyways, we don't have to beat that dead horse. It's not going to be close. 52-14.
52-14. Okay.
Yeah.
52-14. I like it. I'm going to make a prediction on behalf of my father-in-law, Ken Meyer. He likes it 55-17. So, Paige, you guys are in lockstep there, I think, on the prediction. I like Ohio State 41.
Did we get Sloaner's?
I'm sorry, Sloaner. Did we not get yours? I'm sorry. Go ahead, man.
I kind of did it before, but yeah, its last game was 38-7. We're going to score another touchdown. They're going to score a field goal, so 45-10.
45-10. Okay, that's right. All right. I got Ohio State 41-14. It feels now kind of a little low, that prediction. But yeah, I don't see how this one's close. I just, as I said before, I think this team is locked in, and they have a higher calling this year.
Yep, and I'd like to see us get out to a big lead in the first half so Fields can sit the second half.
Yeah. Not only Fields, but some other guys too. You got some other guys limping around out there that could definitely use some rest. So
he's wearing some big bulky knee brace on Saturday.
Yeah, he is. Well, and it'll be interesting to see how that affects his mobility and also the game plan. Will they just try to really use him, from the pocket? I wonder if that changes the approach at all.
We want Chug. We want Chug.
Sugar.
Bring in sugar.
I do want to get some predictions from each of you on the final playoff field. But before we go there, earlier this week, the Big Ten released its all Big Ten selections, and there were some interesting results. First of all, Wisconsin is going to bring 3 unanimous selections into this game, including Jonathan Taylor, who, Matt, as you referenced, was voted the Big Ten running back of the year. Their star linebacker, Zach Bond, was also a unanimous first-teamer, and their starting center, Tyler Biadasz, I think is how you say his name. He's also a unanimous first-team selection. Ohio State has 5 unanimous all Big Ten selections, including Justin Fields, who was also the Big Ten Offensive Player of the Year and the Big Ten Quarterback of the Year. J.K. Dobbins, unanimous all Big Ten selection. And by that, I mean both the media and the coaches selected into the first team. I think you guys know what I mean by that. But just to clarify for the listeners, defensive end Chase Young was the Big Ten Defensive Player of the Year and Big Ten Defensive Lineman of the Year. He's the 4th Ohio State lineman in the last 5 years to win the Defensive Lineman of the Year. That includes Joey Bosa, Nick Bosa, Tyquan Lewis, and now Young. And, of course, Young was a unanimous All-Big Ten selection. Jeff Okudah, also a unanimous All-Big Ten selection. So was safety Jordan Fuller. Jonah Jackson was voted first team by the coaches. Wyatt Davis was voted first team by the media. And Malik Harrison was voted first team by the coaches. And those guys made the second team on the other teams. Damon Arnett was a unanimous second-team selection. Thayer Mumford. Actually, the entire Ohio State offensive line was voted to the first or second team, which I think says something about the improved play of that unit. How awesome is that? And clearly, I mean, I think if you're going to point to maybe the top 3 things that has made this team elite, I think you have to look at the play of the offensive line. That's crazy. My personal opinion...
We usually have 2. One or 2 at most.
Yeah. My opinion on, I guess, biggest snub, and I think it's only because he just didn't get enough opportunities, was Chris Olave. He's a third-team selection. I'm sorry, he's the best receiver in the Big Ten. But, he just didn't get the opportunity, sat too much on the, in the second and third quarters.
He'll get it next year.
He'll get it next year. Yeah, I mean, you can't give all the awards to, all the spots to one team, but... You guys have any comments on the all Big Ten selections? Any snubs you want to mention?
No, not really, man. I think you guys covered. I mean, I not to pour salt in the wound, but I like what Floner had to say about Saturday Dobbins was going to be like, fuck you, Taylor.
Yeah.
So I mean, I think that's a bush league fucking shot, and Olave, but he's got next year. So, but I mean, it's pretty impressive, man. You look from top to bottom on both sides of the ball. I mean, it's Buckeyes. It's awesome.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, they are very well represented on these teams, both the first and second team. So, and that speaks to, the kind of year they've had. I still maintain this is the best regular season Ohio State team of my lifetime, and we'll see how they do in the postseason. I hope they can, obviously carry it into the postseason. Guys, any other comments on the all Big Ten selections?
No.
It should be motivating for our defensive line to want to shut down Taylor as much as it is for Dobbins to want to go off and rush for 200 yards.
Yeah. Yeah, well, and this definitely feels like the kind of game where you're going to have to find some added motivation.
Yeah.
There's just not a lot of juice, but I guess, hey, a Big Ten outright Big Ten title should be motivation enough, and then one would hope that also what would come with that would be a number 1 seed in the playoff field. And so, well, let me get your guys' opinions on that. So, does Ohio State need to win this game convincingly to lock up the number 1 seed? Matt, what are your thoughts on that?
No, they just need to win, and I mean, it's they're playing a ranked team. They've been playing ranked teams the last 3 weeks. So I think if it will be, unless it's some controversy, even if it's by 3 points or 1 point, you will still lock the number one seed.
Okay. Mike, what do you think? Do we need to run away with this one to impress the committee to hold on to that 1 seed?
Yeah, I think so, actually. I don't think if we just squeak by with the 1 touchdown or something like that, we could easily drop down to number 2, which I don't think would be the worst thing in the world. But LSU's playing Georgia. Georgia's number 4.
Yeah.
Top 4 teams are in a different class than the top 10 teams, 5 through 10. Those are, Georgia is considered, they're up there. They're considered almost an elite team. If LSU blows them out, or if they just look really, really good beating them, and we sort of look like we're just sort of getting through the victory, or Wisconsin just rolls over on us, I could easily see us dropping to number 2.
Okay. Paige, what do you think?
I'm with Sloaner. I don't think it matters. I think 1 point, we're still number 1. And the reason for that is Wisconsin moved up 4 points or 4 spots in the committee's eyes. And the other thing is Wisconsin, Penn State, and Michigan are all 6 to 8 spots higher in the committee poll than they are in all the other polls, the AP poll and the coaches poll.
That's interesting.
Right?
That's
There's
a good
no
point.
way that the Big Ten's getting let out of this thing. And, so I'm not suggesting that, but they want Ohio State 1. They want Ohio State in this playoff. I don't even think they need to win. I bet you they could lose by 20 and they'll still be in the playoff.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, well, you kind of called that last week. You said that you thought the committee would elevate Wisconsin in the rankings on Tuesday, which would then give them the justification to give the 1 seed to Ohio State, and they elevated them 4 spots, as you pointed out. You were right about that. Chad, what do you think? Does Ohio State have to run away with this one to hold on to the 1 seed?
No, honestly, Zach, I don't think so. I think probably 10 points to get us the number 1 seed.
All right. All right. I like it.
Now, and like I said earlier, because I think the committee wants Ohio State and Clemson in the national championship, man. So, I think it's going to set up that way. Hopefully, I want Davo, man. Davo.
Davo.
I can't stand that prick. Right. I would say, as far as one of the other big games for the implication of the 1 seed would be the LSU Georgia game, Z. And as I said, if I was still a betting man, I would put all my cash on Georgia getting 6.5 against LSU.
Okay.
All right, I'll take that action, dude.
Oh.
Yeah, all day, every day.
All right.
I also like LSU over Clemson.
LSU over Clemson. You mean if they were matched up in the playoff?
Yeah, if they're 2 and 3, I like LSU over Clemson.
Wow. Okay. All right. We'll get there in a second.
Time traveler.
Which actually, yeah. But Chad makes a great point. Nobody in the planet wants to see Clemson. Outside of the Southeast, a Clemson LSU finals. They just don't want to see it.
Well, we saw that last year.
You avoid that by keeping You avoid it by having Ohio State as the 1 seed.
Interesting. Okay.
And then hope they win their game.
What I'm a little nervous about the fact that the committee can just change their mind from 1 week to the next, right? This isn't like the poll system or the BCS where you see an accumulation of votes or points and you can see a margin from one team to the next in the rankings. The playoff committee doesn't show that. So we're assuming that Ohio State has built up a lead with this number 1 ranking, right? They've actually kind of strengthened their hold on the lead or on the one ranking, after the big win against Michigan. And that's a reasonable assumption, but we don't know for sure. And it just seems like, from 1 week to the next, the committee can change its mind and tear up what they decided the week before. So we'll see. I don't know. We'll find out. I guess we'll see.
What do you think, Z, about all those that Homer Clay Travis, whoever the hell he is? He's a Fox Radio. Yeah. So I would think that the committee, after them beating Alabama the way they did, if they were going to go ahead of us at any point, it would have been then. You know what I mean? So
right.
I think even if Ohio State wins it by 7, we still will keep the number 1 seed.
That's reasonable. Yeah, that's reasonable. I mean, my gut says that the committee wants to keep Ohio State at 1, and as Paige has already pointed out, if you look at how their previous opponents have been ranked and they've been elevated to beef up their resume, I think that's probably it. I'm just a little nervous because the committee can kind of just change their minds from one week to the next.
LSU is number 1 in the polls right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got coaches, but that's some bullshit, man.
So the margin's got to be pretty close, even though they don't show the margin for the committee.
Yeah, that's a good point.
They got to be thinking it's close. Well, let me ask you guys this: why do you want to be number 1? Why not? Why wouldn't you want to face Clemson as in the first playoff game, then LSU in the championship game?
Because I want to be undefeated, number 1.
Like you said, this is a team of destiny. This is our year. This is the year we can get these guys, both of those teams in 1 year.
Yeah.
This is the year.
We can wear a red jersey.
This is a special team.
Yeah.
We're scarlet.
This
the
is
whole
our
time.
best chance to get Clemson and LSU in the same year.
Yeah.
That's what I want. I want to be number 2.
Fair enough.
I hope LSU blows out Georgia.
Okay. And Matt,
that's what I'm hoping for.
All right. And Matt, I know you've said you don't really care. If they got to play 2 games anyway, got to beat the best to be the best. So, yeah.
Right. Good point.
Yep. Maybe it doesn't matter. I personally don't want to see Clemson in the first round. I'd rather face Utah. But then again, you careful what you wish for. Maybe, who knows? Maybe Utah or Oklahoma or somebody's got the kryptonite for Ohio State.
Yeah, it's like Cardell. Let
me ask you guys this. What was the more satisfying win in 2014? The Alabama victory or the Oregon victory? What was the most satisfying win?
Yeah,
no question.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They were both.
By the time you want to be Utah or Baylor or Oklahoma, and then
stop it.
Huh?
They were.
The championship game will be a good game because it'll be either Clemson or LSU.
And also, it's the championship game. Look, they were 2 different meals, but they were both as equally satisfying. They had different tastes and different serving portions, but they had
one had
different
creme brulee. One
had, they had different sorts of satisfaction to them. I mean, so
I like that. I like that analogy.
It would be better to get them both because this is a team of destiny. This is our team. I mean, like you said, they just don't. We can't find a weakness on this team. Yeah. It's just even if we do, even if they do run over, the middle, like we were saying, Dave makes these adjustments and bam, 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 it's all taken care of. And we haven't had a close game in the fourth quarter, for God's sake.
Interesting.
But you know what? We still haven't found out if he's Neo yet, and we still have to wait and see how he could do when we get into deeper waters, when we do play teams that have as much athletic talent as we do, and see what he can really do.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a good point, and I think Gallagher made that point last Sunday on the pod. When have we come away from any of these opponents thinking, whoa, these guys had equal talent, right? In my personal opinion, it was only Penn State. It was on one side of the ball, and that was the defensive side of the ball with guys like Parsons and Gross Matos and those guys. But I haven't come away from most of these matchups thinking, man, that team had equal talent. Maybe they had a player or two that you had to be careful. But now when you face Clemson or you face LSU, that is like talent. They've got dudes that can match up across the board. So you make a compelling argument, Mike. I think I think you're right. I mean, is there as an Ohio State fan, if I'm being honest with myself, fuck yeah, a first round, a semifinal win over Clemson would be way more satisfying than it would be over
Clemson's not the same
Utah.
team as they were last year. They they were tough. They're just not the same team they were 2 years ago with Deshaun Watson when they blew us out in the playoffs, a humiliating, embarrassing loss. Mm-hmm. Now we can get them, and then we could also beat LSU, who their defense is just not that strong.
Terrible.
I mean,
yeah.
I think
they're
not
not
strong defense is Utah.
Yeah, Utah's got a good defense. Okay, so that's a good point. That's a good argument. Mike, I know a lot of Ohio State fans are clamoring for that 1 seed because they want the easier, I'm putting it in air quotes, semifinal, but I think you make a compelling point there. So, all right, well, that leads us into the next thing I'd like to talk about. I want to get each of you, your playoff field predictions, 1 through 4. Chad, I'm going to start with you. Give me the field. What's the committee going to tell us on Sunday? I think it's like at noon Eastern. What's the 4 going to look like?
I'm going to take Ohio State number 1.
Okay.
LSU 2, LSU 2, Clemson 3, and Utah 4.
Okay. Paige, what's the field going to look like on Sunday morning?
I agree with my buddy. Exactly. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Utah's the 4th seed.
Utah gets in.
Nice, brother.
All right, I like it.
Yep.
Mr. Corcoran, give us your 4.
It's hard to disagree with that. That's the conventional wisdom. If everything goes as planned, it's probably going to be that. Utah's going to get in. They're going to beat Oregon. I don't want to play Utah. I'd rather give you what I want to see. I want to say it.
Just give us your top 4.
I want OSU. All right, I'm going to go LSU 1, OSU 2, Clemson 3, and I'll go Oklahoma 4.
Oklahoma 4. Okay. So you got an Ohio State Clemson semifinal. It's pretty juicy. All right. I like Ohio State number 1, LSU 2, Clemson 3. I feel like Oklahoma could sneak in at 4. That there's no guarantee Utah gets by Oregon on a neutral field on Friday night. Oklahoma, they beat.
I'll settle for Oklahoma.
The other thing about Oklahoma, if you're looking at the 3 teams that are kind of left, right? Oklahoma, Baylor, and then Utah. Oklahoma has a player in Jalen Hurts, guys like Hurts, CeeDee Lamb. I'm blanking on the name of their running back. They've got a dynamic, explosive offense that I think is going to generate offense against anybody. That team scares me a little bit. So that's my 4. I think Oklahoma sneaks in at number 4, and we'll see.
Sloaner?
Yeah, if Oklahoma gets by, it looks like their strength, statistic-wise, their strength of schedule is going to be more impressive than most of the other teams.
I agree.
Zach?
Sloaner, what's your number 4?
Did you not get my envelope in the mail, Zach? You're just like skipping me all the time.
I'm sorry about
that. So, Bucks number 1, number 2, Georgia.
Ooh.
Number 3, Clemson. Number 4, LSU.
Wow. Okay, so you like
number
Georgia?
4, who?
LSU.
LSU.
So Matt's calling a Georgia win in the SEC title.
Page.
Okay.
Yes.
LSU's going to lose to Georgia, but still get in. That's what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yes, that's exactly what I'm saying, Mike.
Yeah.
Okay.
And a lot of people think. All right. I like it. All right. Hey, that's a pretty good effort for a Thursday, guys. Thanks so much for making the time. We will reconvene on Sunday after the playoff selection show. I'll send you guys the time.